My brother Frank, 40-year-old male, was widowed 6 years ago. 2 years ago he got remarried to Emily, 38-year-old female. Frank has 3 children with his first wife. Ava, 14-year-old female, Noah, 13-year-old female, and Harley, 10-year-old male. Emily also has a son, 9-year-old male, and a stepdaughter from her ex-husband, who she has custody of, 12-year-old female. Frank and Emily started dating just before the pandemic hit. The kids were not aware of the fact Frank was dating. He told them 2 months before the wedding. It was a month later he announced he was getting married and Emily and her kids were moving in. Frank's kids have adapted worse than Emily's kids. The kids have refused to take part in family activities, are distant and cold with Emily and her kids, and have yelled at my brother multiple times, accusing him of replacing their mom and saying, "Fuck Emily, they don't care about Emily, they don't want Emily," etc. Frank, Emily, Ava, Noah and Harley have started attending family counselling, around 7 months or so now. They have seen 3 therapists thus far because the kids would sit and sulk, per Frank's own words, and would not open up or engage, and each time the therapist ends up just talking to Frank and Emily. Frank started to complain about how mad the kids are at him. He said they were selfish for expecting him to stay single for the rest of his life. He said he's tired of them making no effort to make the blended family work. He said he hates how they work against it, and he hates how people treat him like he made a mistake when he remarried. He wanted to know if he wasn't entitled to his happiness, etc. I listened to him vent countless times. Last time he told me he felt I had something to say, and I should just say it. I told him his mistake was never in remarrying but in how he did it. He only told the kids he was dating 2 months prior to his wedding, told them a month later he was getting married, and 3 people were moving in and then married in that 2-month timeline when everything was still very new and strange to them. I told him most kids will struggle with the idea of their parent moving on after divorce or the death of their parent. That's why people usually spend years dating and getting the kids adjusted, so they have time to process and work through their feelings, to work through the fresh wave of grief that hearing news like that would bring. I said dating and letting everyone get to know each other over a period of time and helping the kids through is the best way to make a blended family. He got mad at me and told me he shouldn't have to adjust his timeline for anyone, not even his kids. I asked him how he'd feel to hear Dad is dating someone 30 years after our mum died. He told me there is no way Dad would do that and frick me for even suggesting it. I told him so he'd have a problem with it, but can't understand his kids having a problem with him doing it. He told me it's not the same and he's not judging Dad, but I'm judging him, and that makes me a jerk. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the jerk at all. Those poor kids. Frank sounds like he is the worst. I actually want to cry for these kids. Ugh, this is absolutely awful. Do you see them a reasonable amount? I hope so. Sounds like they'll need whatever healthy relationships they can get. Comment 2. He got mad at me and told me he shouldn't have to adjust his timeline for anyone, not even his kids. And now we know why his kids don't say anything during their family counselling sessions. Not the jerk. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments on my last post. They really helped me see things from different perspectives and gave me some insight into how to approach the situation with my brother Frank and his family. Well, it's been a week since I last shared what was going on, and let me tell you, things have taken quite a turn. After our last conversation, Frank and I didn't talk for a few days. He was pretty upset with what I had said, and I guess he needed some time to cool off. But then, out of the blue, he called me up and asked if we could meet for coffee. We sat down and he looked different, almost like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He started by apologizing for how he reacted to our previous talk. He admitted that he had been thinking a lot about what I said and realized that maybe he had been too harsh on the kids and not as understanding as he should have been. Frank told me that he had a long talk with Emily about everything. They decided to slow things down and try to focus more on the kids' feelings. They even postponed a family vacation they had planned, realizing it might be too much too soon for everyone to handle. But here's where things get really surprising. Frank and Emily sat down with all the kids for a family meeting. They wanted to clear the air and give the kids a chance to speak openly about their feelings without any judgment. It was a tough conversation, with a lot of tears and raw emotions. Ava, Noah and Harley expressed how they felt like their mum was being erased and that they weren't ready for such big changes. During this heart-to-heart, Emily's son, who had been pretty quiet up until now, suddenly spoke up. He revealed that he had overheard a conversation between Emily and her ex-husband that he wasn't supposed to hear. Apparently, Emily's ex had been pressuring her to fight for full custody of their daughter, who currently lived with him. He had been using the tension in Frank's household as leverage, claiming the environment was unstable for their daughter. This was a bombshell for everyone. Emily was in tears, explaining that she never wanted to bring this up because she didn't want to add to the stress the family was already going through. She had been trying to handle it quietly with her lawyer, hoping to resolve things amicably without involving the kids. The revelation seemed to shift something in the dynamic. Suddenly, Frank's kids saw Emily in a different light. They realized she was dealing with her own struggles and that she was trying to protect them from more drama. It was a turning point. Ava, Noah, and Harley started to open up more, and for the first time, it felt like they were really talking to Emily and her kids, not just coexisting with them. Frank was stunned by all of this. He had no idea about the custody battle Emily was facing, and it made him see how much she had been juggling. He felt guilty for not being more supportive and for not noticing the signs that she was struggling. After that meeting, things started to change at home. The kids began to make an effort to include each other. They started doing small things like watching movies together or playing games. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of tension, but it was progress. Now here's the twist that none of us saw coming. Just when it seemed like things were settling down, Frank got a call from his late wife's parents. They had been pretty distant since their daughter's passing, but now they wanted to reconnect with their grandchildren. They had heard about the troubles at home and wanted to offer their support. Frank was hesitant at first. He wasn't sure how to feel about them reaching out after so much time, but he agreed to let them visit. The reunion was emotional, and it brought up a lot of memories for Ava, Noah, and Harley, but it also brought some healing. Their grandparents shared stories about their mum, and it seemed to bring a sense of peace to the kids. Just when we thought things were on an upswing, the grandparents dropped a bombshell of their own. They had been in touch with a lawyer about the possibility of seeking custody of Frank's kids, citing the instability of the blended family situation. They felt that they could provide a more stable and familiar environment for their grandchildren. Frank was blindsided. He couldn't believe that his in-laws, who had been absent for so long, were now trying to take his kids away from him. He was furious and scared, not knowing what this meant for the future of his family. So that's where we are now. A family that was just starting to heal is now facing a potential custody battle on two fronts. Frank is trying to stay strong for the kids, but I can tell he's worried. We're all hoping for the best, but this new development has thrown us all for a loop. Now for the comments, comment 1, Frank, it's tough blending families, and it sounds like you've been trying to juggle a lot. It's good you're taking steps to address the kids' feelings now. Remember, healing and bonding take time. Keep that line of communication open and be patient. They'll come around with consistent love and support. Comment 2, man, I've been there. My sister went through a similar situation with her stepkids. It was a roller coaster, but what really turned things around was when they started doing activities that each kid enjoyed. It helped them bond naturally without forcing it. Hang in there, it gets better. Now, for the next story. I, 16-year-old female, lost my parents and left leg to a drunk driver when I was 5. My maternal grandparents got custody of me because my aunts and uncle already had young children and didn't have the time and money for a traumatized, disabled child. My paternal half-brother went to his mum permanently because our dad's parents died young, and I couldn't see him as much. I don't remember much about the process because I was in the hospital while all of the legal stuff was sorted out, but it was difficult, and I really struggled adjusting when I was younger. My Aunt Mary is the one who is relevant. She has 2 children, Derek, 13, and Sarah, 16, and we all go to the same school. For as long as I've been living with my grandparents, she's had a problem with their favoritism. Because I see them all the time, because I live with them, Derek and Sarah should get special days every weekend that I'm not allowed to go on because I see them all the time. If my half-brother visited us for Christmas, Derek and Sarah should get to have friends over that my grandparents will look after. If my prosthetic leg was expensive, Derek and Sarah should get equally expensive gifts. Derek and Sarah are just as entitled, even though our other cousins are normal about things. Sarah and I are in 6th form now, and share a common room when we previously wouldn't see each other much at all. I recently needed a new leg because of a growth spurt over the summer, and I just had an appointment last weekend to have it fitted. It meant that my grandparents couldn't come to a lunch Mary was organising because it was too long of a journey to get back in time for them at their age. Sarah has been complaining about it all week because she was going to show off a trophy she got at a gymnastics competition for the school, at a major competition she was working towards all summer. I get that it's a big deal, but she's been calling me spoiled and bratty to all of her friends and anyone who will listen. None of them really care, but no one is telling her to stop either. On Friday morning, she was complaining again during a study period because I'll be having another appointment on Saturday, even though we're going to lunch with her family on Sunday. She said that I needed to learn that other people's achievements matter, and I should learn to share attention and stop being such a baby. No one on our table told her to stop, and she was going to keep going, so I called her a narcissistic brat who wouldn't last a day in my life. She went crying to her parents, and now there's been a bunch of arguing in our family over how involved my grandparents are with my cousins. My grandparents are on my side, but I want to know if they should be. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Your grandparents are essentially your parents now. A new prosthetic is not a present. It's something you need to function. Your aunt is pathetic, and so are your cousins. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Tell her you will trade places. Her parents are dead and she has no leg, and she can have all the attention she wants from the grandparents. Now for the update. Since that incident, things have been tense, to say the least. My grandparents tried to smooth things over by inviting Mary, Derek and Sarah over for a family dinner, but it didn't go as planned. The dinner started off okay, but the air was thick with unspoken words and forced smiles. Halfway through, Sarah brought up the trophy again, and the conversation spiraled from there. She accused me of always being the center of attention and said that I didn't understand what it was like to work hard for something because everything was handed to me. I couldn't believe she said that. I wanted to scream that nothing about my life was easy, but I bit my tongue. The evening ended with Mary taking her kids and leaving early. The following week at school, I noticed a shift. Some of my classmates who had overheard Sarah's rant started treating me differently. They were either overly sympathetic, which felt patronizing, or they avoided me, not wanting to get involved. It was isolating, and I found myself spending more time in the library to avoid the common room drama. Then, things got worse. Derek, who had been relatively quiet until now, decided to take a page out of Sarah's book. He started making snide comments whenever he saw me in the halls. He'd say things like, "Must be nice getting everything you want," or "Watch out, here comes the Queen." I tried to ignore him, but it was hard not to let it get to me. At home, my grandparents were doing their best to support me, but they were also struggling with the family fallout. They felt guilty for the tension between them and Mary, and they were worried about how this was affecting me. They started second-guessing their decisions, wondering if they had been showing me favoritism without realizing it. The final straw came when my prosthetic leg needed an unexpected adjustment. The socket was causing me discomfort, and I had to miss a day of school to get it fixed. When I returned, I found out that Derek had spread a rumor that I skipped school on purpose to get out of a test. I was furious and confronted him about it, but he just shrugged and walked away. That weekend, my grandparents sat me down for a talk. They said they wanted to make things right with Mary and her family, but they didn't know how. They suggested that maybe we could all go to family counselling, but I wasn't sure if that would help or just make things more complicated. Now I'm stuck in this weird place. I'm angry at Sarah and Derek for how they've treated me, but I also feel bad for my grandparents. They're caught in the middle of this mess, and it's not their fault. I don't know if I should push for family counselling, or if I should just try to keep my distance from my aunt and cousins. I'm also worried about the long-term effects this could have on our family. It's like we're at a crossroads, and I have no idea which path to take. Now for the comments, comment 1. Hey there, I'm really sorry to hear about the tough spot you're in. Have you tried sitting down with your grandparents and explaining how this whole situation makes you feel? Sometimes clear communication can work wonders. Also, family counselling might be a good neutral ground to work things out. Just remember, it's okay to seek help and prioritise your mental health. Comment 2. I went through something similar with my cousins growing up. It's rough when family dynamics get twisted. My advice? Don't let their negativity define you. You've been through a lot, and it's important to surround yourself with people who support you. Family counselling could be a step in the right direction, but make sure you're comfortable with it. Take care of yourself first. Now for the next story, my fiancé, 24-year-old male, and I, 19-year-old female, had our first baby last week. He was born healthy, but giving birth was very traumatic and challenging for me mentally and physically. I had an emergency C-section after being in labour for 3 days. I still feel extremely hazy and disconnected from reality. I only wanted my fiancé's parents present to meet the baby in the hospital. The rest were welcome to FaceTime us, but they would have to wait to see our son after we had gone home and had time to adjust to having a newborn. I'm not close with my family because I left home at 18 to escape their abuse. Almost none of them are allowed contact with my child because of the way they treated me and my siblings. My fiancé's family is a very close-knit group, and all of them have been very kind and welcoming to me up until this point. I wouldn't be marrying into the family if they weren't. The only one I've had issues with is my fiancé's brother, 30-year-old male, who has autism. He makes a lot of offhand comments and jabs that are passed off as dark humour. When my in-laws arrived, they brought my fiancé's older brother, whom they care for and allow to live with them. He is diagnosed with autism, but does not have any severe disabilities. I wasn't happy that they had brought him against my wishes, but I didn't say anything considering everything I had gone through. My fiancé's brother was insistent on holding our son. He was loud, had an attitude, and had a strong odour. His clothes were dirty and his hair was greasy. It was like he hadn't showered in weeks. Again, I didn't comment on his hygiene, but I tried to explain that I didn't want anyone holding the baby right now, except my in-laws. I was as kind as possible. My in-laws told me that he didn't mean any harm and that he could wash his hands. I told them no again, and my fiancé backed me up when they didn't calm down. My father-in-law took his son home, and my mother-in-law stayed and apologised, but my fiancé's brother is apparently deeply hurt and texted my fiancé to tell him not to marry me because I'm driving them apart and a witch who wants to keep him from his nephew. I'd like to clarify that my fiancé himself has confirmed that his brother was not always this limited and was fairly typical until high school, when he seemed to start exaggerating his diagnosis for sympathy. He hasn't worked a day in his life and relies on his parents for support. He does not shower or even bother to apply deodorant before leaving the house. He would literally wear the same clothes for months if not for his mom doing his laundry. I have no ill will towards people with autism or disabilities. My youngest brother had Down syndrome, and I cared for him as an identified child. My issue is solely with my brother-in-law. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Babies get sick easily. Hygiene is important when someone wants to hold or even be around a newborn. You did the right thing, especially since you are also healing from a major procedure. Comment 2. Why has a man in his mid-20s impregnating and trying to marry a teenager? I'm your age and this is not normal in the slightest. Now, for the update. The first few weeks at home with our baby were a blur of sleepless nights and learning curves. My fiancé was a rock, taking care of both me and our son as I recovered from the C-section. His parents visited a few times, always without his brother, which I was grateful for. They seemed to understand the boundaries we had set and respected our wishes. However, the tension with my fiancé's brother didn't just disappear. He continued to send messages to my fiancé, some apologetic, others filled with anger and accusations. My fiancé tried to handle it delicately, not wanting to cause a rift in the family, but also standing firm on our decision to keep our son's environment as calm and clean as possible. Then, about 2 weeks after we came home, my fiancé's brother showed up unannounced. He stood on our doorstep, freshly showered for once, holding a stuffed animal for our son. It was awkward, to say the least. My fiancé went outside to talk to him, and I watched from the window holding our baby a little tighter. They talked for a long time, and when my fiancé came back in, he looked drained. His brother had apologized, sort of. He said he understood why we were upset but felt like we were overreacting. He promised to make an effort to be cleaner and more respectful if it meant he could be part of his nephew's life. We decided to give him a chance, setting strict rules for visits. He had to be clean, wear fresh clothes, and he couldn't just drop by whenever he wanted. He agreed, and for a while, it seemed like things might be okay. But it wasn't long before the old habits crept back in. He started showing up with less notice, his hygiene slipping again. My fiancé had to turn him away at the door more than once, which led to more angry messages and accusations that we were being unfair. In the midst of all this, my own family drama started to resurface. I received a letter from my estranged mother, full of apologies and pleas for a chance to meet her grandson. It was the last thing I needed. I hadn't told my fiancé about it yet, unsure of how to even approach the subject given everything else we were dealing with. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, my fiancé's parents sat us down for a talk. They were worried about his brother, about the family dynamic, and about us. They suggested family therapy, a neutral ground where we could all talk about our issues and try to find a way forward. We agreed hesitantly. The first session was tense, with my fiancé's brother barely speaking to me, but as the weeks went by we started to make some progress, or at least it felt like we were. It's been a month now since our son was born, and life is still a juggling act of new parenthood, family tensions, and trying to find our footing. My fiancé and I are stronger than ever, united in our love for our son and our desire to protect him. But there are still so many questions hanging in the air. Will my fiancé's brother truly make an effort to change? Can we find a way to include him in our son's life without the drama? And what about my own family? Do I dare open that door, or is it better left closed? I guess only time will tell. For now, we're taking it one day at a time, holding our little boy close and hoping for the best. Now for the comments. Comment 1. Not the idiot. It's important to set boundaries, especially after a traumatic birth. Maybe consider a mediated conversation with your brother-in-law to address your concerns directly. It might help clear the air and establish mutual respect. Remember, your comfort and your baby's well-being come first. Comment 2. Not the idiot, but girl. You're navigating a family minefield with more drama than a soap opera. Keep that spine shiny and stand your ground. Maybe get your brother-in-law a soap on a rope as a peace offering. Just kidding, but seriously, protect your peace and that little bundle of joy. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.